In this video, we're going to practice brush control while painting patterns. I don't know about you, but I get bored with brush drills. I know practice is important, but I want something to show for it when I'm done. So painting patterns is how I practice brush control while creating a piece of art. It's also a fun way to try out new brushes or swatch new paint colors. I'll show you how to get started with a simple striped pattern. For each row of the pattern, you can experiment with different brushes and create different shapes. Then, once you're comfortable with your brushes and making marks, I'll show you how to paint a mermaid scale pattern. I made two templates for you. One is stripes of varying widths. The other is the fish scale or mermaid scale pattern. You can trace the patterns onto your watercolor paper and paint with me. For this tutorial, you can use whatever brushes, paint colors, and watercolor paper you prefer. I will be painting in my Be Creative watercolor sketchbook, which is 100% cotton cold press paper. For paint colors, I will be using three analogous colors: Indanthrone blue, phthalo blue, and turquoise blue. I recommend using analogous colors, which are any three colors next to each other on the color wheel, because we'll be doing some color blending. Analogous colors usually blend nicely together without any issues. I will be using a variety of different brushes. As I paint, I'll tell you which brush I'm using. You do not need to have all these different types of brushes. I just want to show you the possibilities. If you are interested in any of my brushes, I will put links to them in the description. For the stripe pattern, I'm going to start at the top and work my way down the page. I taped the sides of my paper so I'll have a nice border. For the first row, I'm using my number 2 round brush to paint staggered vertical lines with turquoise. I think it looks like fringe. Then, I switched to purple paint and added dots in the open spaces. Next, I used my number 2 round brush to paint X's in blue. When painting this small, it's important to make sure you don't have too much paint on your brush. You can dab your brush on a towel to control how wet it is. For the next row, I'm using my number 8 brush to paint circles. I'm holding the brush straight up and down so I can paint with the tip of the brush. For this wide row, I'm using my 1/2-inch flat brush to make a scalloped pattern. I'm just moving the brush up and down in an arcing motion. Then I went back and added dots under the scallops. Now I'm using my number 8 round brush to make 2 rows of dots. Every time I reload my brush, I'm dipping it in a different color. That way the dots gradually change color as they go across the page. For this row, I'm using my 1/2-inch oval mop brush. I'm stamping the brush on the page to make rounded marks. It's fun to see what kinds of shapes different brush tips make. For the next tiny row, I'm using my number 2 round brush to make dashes. Every time I reload my brush, I dip it into a different color for a gradual color changing effect. Next, to balance out those busy little dashes, I'm using my number 8 round to paint a row of turquoise dots. For this next large row, I'm using my number 8 round brush to make leaf-like shapes. I'm starting up on the tip of the brush, pressing down on the belly, and then finishing on the tip. I made a zigzag pattern first, then I changed colors to add more horizontal leaf shapes. Then I switched to my number 2 round to add some dots in the middle. Now I'm using my number 2 round again to make X's alternating with plus signs. Next, I'm using my size 15-0 lettering brush, which is like a very long flat brush. I'm stamping the length of the bristles on the paper to make vertical stripes. For this big row, I'm using a 1/2-inch oval wash brush, which has a pointed tip. I'm using it to make some large leaf-like shapes. Then I'm using my number 2 round brush to decorate around the leaves with dots that taper down in size as the brush runs out of paint. Now I'm painting circles again with the tip of my number 8 round brush. I think it's nice to repeat some of the same patterns on the page. Next, I'm using my number 2 round brush to make 4 pointed stars. I'm drawing them with the tip of the brush and then filling them in. Now I'm using my larger size 10-0 lettering brush to make more vertical brush marks. I love how the bottom of these marks is rounded. Time for some more dots with my number 8 round brush. This time I'm changing colors as I work across the page. Now I'm using my number 2 round brush to draw small arches. I'm switching colors every time I reload my brush. I love the color changing effect. On this last big row, I'm using my 1/2-inch flat brush to make more scallops going the other way. Then I'm adding dots in the open spaces. Next, I'm using my size 15-0 lettering brush to make a row of larger X's. You could also do this with the tip of a round brush or with a small flat brush. Now I'm using my number 8 round brush to make a row of horizontal leaf shapes. To finish this pattern off, I'm going to add some more fringe. I'm using my number 2 round brush to paint staggered lines. Then I'm adding dots in the open spaces. Wasn't that fun? All the patterns and marks look so cool together. Even if you make a mark that you don't like while you're painting it, once you see everything together on the finished page, you're gonna love the whole thing. If you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Now let's paint a slightly more complex pattern. This time, instead of painting rows, we're going to paint patterns inside the scales. I'm going to paint 6 different patterns and scatter them randomly across the page. I'm going to use some of my favorite marks from the stripe pattern, and I'm also going to make a few new patterns to fit the scales. To start with, I'm painting in the first scale with color-changing dashes, just like I did on the stripe pattern, except now I'm following the arc shape. I'm using my number 2 round brush and changing colors every time I reload my brush. Now I'm repeating that same pattern in 6 or 7 other random spots on the page. Next, I'm making scallops with my size 15-0 lettering brush. You could also use a small flat brush to do this. I'm pulling the last scallop down to fill in the point of the scale. Then I'm repeating that same pattern in 6 or 7 other spots on the page. For the next pattern, I'm using my number 2 round brush to make a seashell. I painted a vertical line down the center of the scale and then turned it into a long drop-like shape. I painted more drop-like shapes on either side of it that arc outward. I changed colors from turquoise to blue to purple. Now I'm repeating that same shell pattern around the page. Next, I feel like I need some dots. I'm using my number 8 round brush to paint a row of large dots and then a row of smaller dots. I repeated those around the page. Then I went back with my number 2 round brush and filled in the point of each scale. Then I changed colors and painted blue lines radiating out towards the dots. Now I'm using my size 10-0 lettering brush to make a color-changing arc pattern. You could use a small flat brush for this too. For each arc, I'm starting with turquoise on my brush and then adding blue and then purple. Before starting the next arc, I rinse my brush out and reload it with the turquoise. I finished the pattern with a solid turquoise drop shape at the bottom. Now I'm repeating that same pattern around the page. For the final pattern, I want to do something Art Deco inspired. I flipped my paper around so I can use my No. 0 rigger brush to pull long, thin strokes toward me. I'm starting with the center stroke and then fanning the strokes out to each side. I repeated that pattern on the rest of the empty scales. Then I went back with my No. 2 round brush to fill in the empty space with turquoise, leaving a tiny white outline. I love the eclectic randomness of the mermaid scale pattern. It looks complex, but it was really easy to repeat a few patterns over and over again. I hope this tutorial inspired you to try a new way to practice brush control. This is the perfect thing to do when you want to paint, but you don't know what to paint. You can copy my patterns or make up your own. Have fun with it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I post a new watercolor tutorial every week.